Hello and welcome back to another episode. Today I want to share with you a little something that I recently made. It's a cottage sailing the ocean's blue. It's Cabbage Patch Corner from the Lilliput Lane collectibles series on the high seas. And I really enjoyed making this, so I figured I'd show you how I did it.
So this is the finished model, but it all started with the Cabbage Patch Corner ceramic house. And this is actually, as I say, one of the Lilliput Lane models, apparently made in England, British made for quality, in 2005 or 2006. So it's like a 20-year-old model at this point. And I knew I wanted to do something with it. It was 50p in a local charity shop, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So it was sitting in a drawer for about 6 months, and then suddenly it hit me. Wouldn't it be fantastic if this was on the high seas? So I began with the hull. Actually, the hull is compressed aluminium foil hammered down into this slightly cartoonish hull shape. It's like almost like a bathtub boat, really, and then covered in polymer clay, obviously shaped and engraved to look like wood, with a nice steering rudder on the back. And I cooked this, baked it off in the oven, stuck it to the base with some of this fantastic tacky glue, actually, and maybe a little bit of super glue to help. And it was great. I knew that I was on the right path when I saw the dimensions of the house and the cross section of that hull. And then added some crafting lollipop sticks underneath the base to give the impression of the hull sort of stretching out in wooden form. And then got to work on the sails. I knew I wanted this to be a sailing ship, not a steamship. And actually the sails were quite straightforward because the mast was the perfect scale. This mast is a lollipop stick from a big fruit lolly that you can get in bulk, actually, at a local shop. And they're wonderful, almost like mini dowels. So I kept them all from a packet of lollies last year. And the mast and the foremast came out of that, along with some smaller little sticks to make the masts for the sails there. The sails themselves are cloth, quite a tightly woven knit. I wanted it to be an appropriate scale of knit for this houseboat. But I actually covered them in the tacky glue, a little bit like hodgepodge, I guess, somewhere between hodgepodge and PVA glue, just to give them a bit of rigidity. I knew that I wanted them to be mounted on the sails with these little rings here implying how they're mounted. But also I wanted them to have a bit of volume, as though they are catching the wind and actually driving the ship forwards. I actually did briefly consider putting a flag on the mast, but I decided against it. There's something simple about the way that I've constructed the sails that I think is appropriate. It feels as though this family living in this little cottage have made this themselves. And have taken the cottage to sea. Of course, I painted an appropriate green and white motif on the sails. Incidentally, thank you so much to the folks who gave me feedback on the Discord server and elsewhere when I posited a couple of digital designs as to how the sails might look. It was very helpful feedback and gave me a bit of time to consider things, because I didn't want to rush into it and make a mistake. With a little cabbage patch on the Cabbage Patch boat. And also I wanted to make use of this section here to imply some washing that's hanging out to dry, again going with the wind, pushing it in that direction. The next step was the cannons. And these are made out of little crafting matchsticks. And again, the same wooden dowels that are used for the masts. But I dremeled a little recess in the end of these little segments of dowel to give the impression of a cannon coming out of a gun port. The cabbage that's being fired is actually a tiny little air drying clay cabbage that has been mounted on the end of a cotton bud, a Q-tip that's coming out of the cannon, and then surrounded by cotton, covered in glue, painted, and somewhat shaped to look like an explosion, a cannon blast in progress. It's my first attempt. I'm quite happy with it. I mean, I have to explain to people what's happening because obviously it's a green cannonball, and therefore initially it looks a bit like maybe a sewer explosion. But I think it works as an effect, as someone's going, yeah, load the cabbage. The last step for this model was deciding that I didn't want it just to rest on the hull. I kept on resting it here on the work surface, and it's got little flecks of paint and stuff, and also bits of wood dust from this model and so on and so forth. And it kept on getting caught in the clay and in the little gaps between the wood texture. And even though I carefully painted it and dry brushed it to look like wood, you get these flecks of white or red or something just turning up. I mean, so like here on the desk, for example, I've got a little fleck of orange there that would just appear on the base of the ship, and I didn't like that. So I took the handle off a broken plastic magnifying glass that I had in a drawer. I sort of snapped it off. It was an old magnifying glass. A piece of plywood and some paint, but also mixed in with some UV drying resin, just to give a little bit of texture to the water, some lumpy bumpies, and mounted it at a slightly jaunty angle onto this base. Finally, there you go, you can see flecks appearing on the felt. Finally putting this felt underneath as well, because there's something quite nice about it having a softened connection wherever you put it down. It adds a bit of class, a bit of weight to the thing. And there you have it. The Cabbage Patch Corner is seaworthy, shipshape, and out to I don't know, to plunder. Is it plundering, or is it just defending itself with the cabbage? I'm not sure. And this might be where maybe getting hold of other Lilliput models and making more might expand this story. Perhaps this is just the first of many that will flesh out this little world. But I've had a great time building this and just playing, I think. Cabbage Patch Corner has taken to the high seas and is finally complete. I don't know what led the owners of this cottage to up sticks and sail the ocean's blue, but if you come across them, you better not cross them. Well, they can do quite a lot of damage with naught but a cannon and a cabbage.
Clearly, they're having a grand old time, and I had a grand old time making this. I'm tempted to make a fleet. If I can find more Lilliput Lane models in charity shops in and around North Tyneside, then I may well do it, because having a little fleet of cute cottages that maybe are firing topical vegetables at each other could be hilarious. But regardless, even if I don't make more, this I think is really quite cool, and I learned a lot doing it as well. I learned a lot about the materials. As I say, polymer clay is changing the way I think about crafting, actually, and it's opening up all sorts of hard modeling possibilities. Not hard edged, so it's not like wood, for example, even though I did use wood in this, but sculpting soft shapes that can become hard, akin to the ceramic of the model itself, in fact, is fantastic. And it's as with any tool. If you have a new tool in your arsenal, in your bag of tricks, then problems are more likely to seem like a problem that can be solved using that skill set. I would possibly like to improve on the technique for the cannon blast, perhaps, but as a first go, again, I'm very pleased with it, and even the UV resin to create a little bit of texture for the sea below worked out well. And the thing about this model has been knowing when to stop, because I could have added a little figure here and there, I could have added a crow's nest, but I didn't want to break the details on the cottage itself too much, break them up, that is, and I didn't want to risk ruining the scale, in fact, by having a little person in there that wasn't quite the right size or didn't have quite the right amount of detail. I figure they're inside, you know, they're steering the ship's wheel and calling down to people below decks to load the cannons with cabbages and win the day. So yeah, Cabbage Patch Corner goes to sea and goes to war, in fact. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Hopefully this has been interesting and maybe even inspires you to have a bit of a play around with your charity shop finds. You never know what you'll find, and you never know how it will inspire you. Until next time, do take care. Bye bye.